You and I have to look at this and understand this, that the ballot is as powerful as the bullet.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Hi. When's the last time you were unsure about something? When I asked myself that question, I answered it in kind of a bizarre way. I'm really not sure. You see, we're going to continue our discussion on certainty and uncertainty today. And one of the most difficult and important realizations we have to make is that we live in a world of relentless uncertainty right now. And it's difficult because we all crave certainty. We love being right about things, right? It's our emotional pacifier and security blanket. We don't like plot twists and nasty surprises. We want the movies in our lives to end like we expect them to. When they don't, it stresses us out, makes us angry, and our work and our lives suffer. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. And we're going to get into it a little bit deeper here in just a minute. First of all, I want to explain my more casual attire here today. This has been one of those weeks and one of those days when I have been running behind since 6 a.m. Monday morning. And even though you think, well, this is recorded, right? Pre-recorded, couldn't you catch a breath, trim your beard and put on a decent shirt? And the answer to that is not this week, man. It's just been crazy. So with that in mind, this is a little freestyle today. And I want to continue to build on this idea that sometimes because we crave certainty, we put ourselves into those echo chambers we talked about on the last podcast. So when I was talking about uncertainty, I had a LinkedIn friend of mine who described his situation. He's a much smarter guy than me, but he described it this way. He said, the inherent speed of information and access to it adds multiple layers of complexity while inviting ambiguity and uncertainty on things we once thought we knew. In its worst form, it creates a Petri dish in our minds of self-induced stress. Okay? Well, that's a mouthful, but man, when I first read that, I thought to myself, I don't understand what that meant. So I had to go down and break it down for myself to figure it out, and I found out he's exactly right. So let's just kind of pick at this one phrase at a time. So this guy said, the inherent speed of information and access to it. All right, we are bombarded with stuff, man, whether it's from X or whatever TV or video stream we're watching, the radio, our work, our friends, our colleagues, texts, all that stuff, right? So information is coming at us faster and there's more of it, right? And so his next part of his sentence says it adds multiple layers of complexity. So when I start thinking about important things, what I believe in, what I don't believe in, what's going on in the news, important events, not things that are people are trying to fan the flames of division, but things that I actually care about, what's going on with my friends, my family, with my life. This idea of multiple layers of complexity seems to make sense to me. On the one hand, you want simple, right? If then kinds of actions, which are easy for us to work through. On the other hand, when we have all of this information coming to us, some of it we believe from reliable sources, some maybe we want to believe is reliable, but we're not too sure, and some we don't even know where it came from. We just saw it somewhere on the internet in a meme or something. That's what he means about different layers of complexity. And it means that we have to critically think about the sources of our information. So far we've got the inherent speed of information and access to it, adding multiple layers of complexity because, like we said, we have to sift through and evaluate the validity and credibility of the sources we're getting the information from. Now, here's this next phrase. While inviting ambiguity and uncertainty on things we once thought we knew. So, I could give you examples here that would be probably more hot button issues, but I won't do that. I'll give you something really simple. For me, there's only been one way to ever tie a fishing knot, right? You put the fishing line through, you spin it until you got at least 8 little curvy things. You push it through the hole closest to the hook and then down back through. You pull it tight. My dad taught it to me like rabbit goes down in the hole. He runs around the tree comes out of the hole, runs around the tree 8 times. He goes back down in the hole and then he runs away. And that was how I learned to tie a fishing net. That's the way to tie it. Well, then I got on this little fishing site, right? And apparently, there's 20 different fishing knots. And that bothered me because, hey, I've been fishing all my life. Why didn't I know all these fishing knots? And then people started doing research with tensor strengths, and this works with monofilament, but this works better with braided line. And I thought to myself, I don't even want to go fishing anymore. I'm going to stress out every time I have to tie a fishing knot, right? That's what he's talking about. Access to new information, multiple layers of complexity. All of a sudden, something that was one of the most simple things in my life has caused uncertainty, even in things I once thought I had wired. I thought I knew, right? And then his last phrase plays out perfectly, and I just demonstrated it to you. In its worst form, it creates a Petri dish of self-induced stress, right? I will never calmly tie a fishing knot again in my life because I'll wonder, is this the best for this lure, for this water, for this line, right? Now, that's probably a silly example, but I'll give you one that's not so silly. And I'm going to credit another LinkedIn friend of mine, Captain Renee O'Shaughnessy, very big social media influencer, podcaster, all sorts of things, brilliant woman, TEDx speaker. And she writes a lot about aviation. I think she has a book called This Is Your Captain Speaking. Could be wrong, but at any rate, she posted something the other day that said, remember, it was just a month ago when that Southwest airline crew did a go around at the last minute and saved a crash because a business jet had taxied across the runway in front of them without clearance. And then just a couple of days ago, a Southwest airline crew tried to take off on a taxiway and had to be stopped by the tower because they weren't on the runway where they were cleared to take off. And her phrase was, from attaboy to oh shit in less than 30 days. And that brings me back to the danger that is posed when we think we're certain about things, we think we're right about things, and we're not, right? So when you think about the first event, you're cleared to land, but yet every pilot knows that someday something might happen. A truck may drive out on the runway. Somebody may cross it without clearance. Who knows? I mean, every year in Alaska, they hit a moose on the runway or two. So you stay, you like you say, you fly the airplane till the last piece stops moving. You stay on your toes. And these guys saw that, and they executed a go around very smoothly, controlled, came back around and landed. Now let's put ourselves in the cockpit of that other aircraft, the one that taxied across the runway without clearance. Or let's put ourselves in the cockpit of that Southwest Airlines aircraft. I promise you, and we We don't know, because I don't know the pilots that were in these. They'll probably never identify them, and we don't have access to the cockpit voice recorders. But I'm pretty darn sure that one of the two pilots in there, stress level was high, wasn't quite sure that they were situationally aware, had the hair on the back of their neck standing up as they crossed the runway or added power for takeoff. And we have a lot of programs that teach, if you don't think something's right, speak up. Crew resource management, those types of things are prevalent in aviation. But here's the thing. When we're uncertain, and like I said, we live in a world of relentless uncertainty, we have to rely on a lot of different things. And I've always kind of liked the term relative karma of the situation, right? How in control do I really feel? How much do I wish I had more information? Am I craving something, one piece of information I don't have? When the relative karma of the situation doesn't seem right, it's time for me to engage my brain, stop what I'm doing if it's something that might endanger others or myself, and figure it out. I have to bring my head fully and completely into the game. So what's that relative karma stuff all about? Well, it's about experience, and it's about understanding how we think when we are certain about something. Right? And there's a few things I am certain about. And I try, having come out of a world of flying airplanes and being certified to deliver nuclear weapons, where there are some hard and fast rules. I am certain that compliance works. It works for me, and it will work for you. But when we start fudging the edges and making things less black and white and more shades of gray on our decisions, when we begin to roll through stop signs, and maybe take short drives without our seat belts on and things like that, when we begin to not trust the simple things like compliance, we're adding layers of complexity, and we're adding different things into that Petri dish of self-induced stress. So that's kind of part one, a little philosophical thinking about what we do when we're uncertain. But I think we need to get comfortable with uncertainty. I think we need to be able to swim in it like a fish, right? Without getting lost. And in order to do that, we need to understand a couple of more things. Right? We need to understand that when we're uncertain about something, we realize that we might be wrong. Right? And I have a whole article out there somewhere that's called "Why Being Wrong Feels So Right." Right? Because we crave certainty, we would rather bind ourselves to a flawed idea than admit we're wrong. Right? And so we push uncertainty away when we should be bringing it to us and questioning our assumptions. Right? We should be doing those things that our logical mind wants to do. When we get feeling that we're wrong and that stress level gets high enough, that really, really bugs us, right? So sometimes what we do is we try to maintain our certainty in an uncertain world when we have no justification for doing it, right? That's very, very dangerous. If you really want to figure something out, you need to stop. You need to look at it deeply. You need to look at it from all sides. And you need to stay mentally fluid enough. Flexible is far too rigid, to change your mind when presented with evidence contrary to your belief. If that co-pilot or the captain of that Southwest Airlines, if one had said, "Hey, are we sure this is even the runway?" That would have been it, right? Poof. Their imaginary world of certainty that they were on a runway when they were actually on a taxiway would have dissolved in that moment. Why didn't that happen, right? Because probably somewhere in the mind, it was 98% that we're on the runway, 2% we might not be. And I really don't want to challenge this guy. I don't have the social courage and strength to speak up right now. Okay. And like I said, that's dangerous, right? We have to stay mentally fluid enough to change our mind when presented with evidence or even feelings, gut feelings, instincts that are contrary to our beliefs. But man, we do not like to do that. We desperately want to stay anchored to our assumptions, right? And that's what a lot of the things we have are. They're not cold, hard facts. We're assuming someone else told us this and it must be right, right? Or this is the way it's always gone, so it's going that way this time. And that's one of the things that drives us into those echo chambers we talked about in our last podcast. But let me spell it out for you as plain, as simply as I can. Many of us would rather be wrong about something for life than to admit that we were wrong about it. I'll say that again. Many of us would rather be wrong about something for life than have to admit that we were wrong about it. That's how pride and ego destroys us, both personally and as a society. So I've talked about Dietrich Dorner a lot of times, and I've read you this quote at least 3 or 4 times in past podcasts, but I love it because it takes so many angles at stuff. He says the ability to admit mistakes is a sign of wisdom. And most people in the thick of complex situations are not yet wise, meaning they can't admit mistakes because people desire security. And this prevents them from accepting the possibility that their assumptions are wrong. So there's that word again. And I hope you caught it. Assumptions. And we've all seen the posters or heard the phrase out there, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, right? They break the word up. Assumptions are snap judgments or beliefs that form without evidence, right? And they seduce us with the promise of quick answers. In the real world, especially in the high-risk real world, assumptions kill people. Doctors that assume they know what a diagnosis is without getting all the tests. Or even a friend hearing a word of something they thought they heard assumes that you've betrayed them, right? And so they no longer want to be your friend or family member. Assumptions in today's world, especially with the social media, people hiding behind keyboards, they don't just destroy reality, they weaponize it, right? And it leaves a lot of wreckage in our lives if we can't sort through it. So in a world that's already really thick with uncertainty, sticking to your assumptions without testing them isn't just lazy, it's lethal. It's lethal to friendships. I've seen families break up over it. And certainly out there in the world of high-risk industries, cops, firefighters, pilots, surgeons, it's often lethal. So where am I going with this? If we're going to live in a world of uncertainty and we're brave enough and courageous enough to realize we can't make assumptions to soothe our troubled minds, we have to work through it and deal with living in a world of relentless uncertainty. What do we do? And I've created this thing that I'll call for our podcast, my 4-step Survive and Thrive Relentless Uncertainty Guide. It's not really a guide. This is the only place it kind of is. 4 steps. The first one is accept that the world's chaotic, right? That's foundational. If we're going to fight uncertainty, we're going to lose, right? And we're not going to make the world clean and simple. It's just not a clean and simple world, right? And I wrote this down in a LinkedIn post the other day. I said, fighting uncertainty is like wrestling with the wind. It exhausts us without altering the outcome one iota. And then I thought to myself, I'm a word guy. What the hell does that mean, one iota? I looked it up. Iota is the smallest letter in the Greek alphabet. And that symbolizes something so tiny, it's barely perceptible. So we're not even going to change the world a little bit by wanting it to be different, right? When we try to wrestle with uncertainty, we don't move the world. We just become more stressed out and eventually fatigued. So that's why acceptance has to be the first step. And acknowledging that the world is, and probably will be, beyond our grasp to control, that busts everything up for us, man. We don't have to be locked into this illusion that we have to control everything. So we conserve a little energy for the things that we can influence, right? Rather than raging against the tyranny of uncertainty. And here's where I'm going to get serious for a second. Many of you know the Serenity Prayer. It's huge in 12-step meetings and in other places. It says, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, I love the Serenity Prayer, but it doesn't really work for me. Right? That's probably going to get me some hate mail from some people out there in the recovery world. The reason it doesn't work for me is because I don't want my mind to be too peaceful, right? I don't want my life to be serene. I like to view my brain as a battle axe, right? And I don't want it to get rusty. Maybe that's just me. I want to be able to get angry. I want to be creative. I want to be able to change things, but not everything and not all at once. So somewhere between the Serenity Prayer and self-destruction chaos, I find myself, right? Acceptance, first step. Second step is adaptability, right? Which we've talked about, natural extension of acceptance. If uncertainty is relentless, our response has to be equally relentless. And that means we got to stay mentally flexible. And not only that, we can't plan everything and expect things to go as planned. Okay? If we got some sort of rigid blueprint in our life, a specific career path, somebody we're going to marry, we're going to have children by this time, some fixed timelines for milestones, that's going to crumble, right? It just is. There's going to be unexpected twists and delays, or maybe things are going to speed up. You know, what we do, instead of saying, I want this thing by this time, we just say, I'm going to be working in that direction by building as many skills and tools as I can, right? And so what we've done is we've set intentions that grow us where we are with the resources at hand. Thank you very much, onlyhumaners. Intentions rather than absolutes, right? Every time we get a detour, every time we get a disruption, every time something doesn't go our way, we hone our ability to pivot, man, persevere, and drive forward better than we were beforehand. And that leads to a key word. Gosh, I haven't talked about it in a month or so now, so it's probably time: resolve, which in my humble opinion might be the most misunderstood and underutilized word in the English language. Here's Tony's 4-part definition of resolve. Part 1, expect, embrace, and never resist a new challenge. Part 2, deal with it to the best of your ability. Part 3, learn from it, win or lose. And Part 4, come out the other side stronger and more ready and more eager for the next big challenge, plot twist in your life. When you can do that, you begin to require uncertainty rather than push it away. Right? Uncertainty becomes a high driver of your entire growth pattern in your future. Man, what's not to like about that? And then finally, I think it's important to realize that uncertainty can be a catalyst for meaning. I mean, sometimes things are so chaotic, you've just got to bring it in and say, what's important to me at my core level right now? That's why I've got my purpose statement, to help as many as I can, as many ways as I can, in as many places as I can, for as long as I can, all of the glory of God. That when things get so chaotic, I just anchor to that. What matters most? What do I stand for, even in the chaos? Right? And I got that a lot from Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor and a psychiatrist. And he said that meaning is not found in certainty, it's found in uncertainty, which strips away everything and leaves you bare in the world. So that's it, really. We're never going to beat uncertainty, but we can learn to use it. And the way that we can best learn to use it, 4 basic steps: acceptance, adaptability, resolve, and finding meaning in our lives, right? So we accept what we can't change. We adapt to what shifts. We anchor ourselves with practices and purpose. And so in a world that refuses to stand still for us, right, this approach is transformative, right? It moves uncertainty from a foe to a strange, weird, twisting and turning, relentless ally. One that tests us, but also shapes us into something stronger, more alive. And when we navigate the unknown, we discover not just how to survive it, but how to live well within it. Fully and fearlessly human, doing great work. So that's it for today. I appreciate you tuning in. Please forgive my casual attire. Next time I'll clean up a little bit, maybe even trim up this beard. But for today, think about living in a relentlessly unstable and chaotic world, and how you can use that to grow every day where you are. Look forward to seeing you next time. Like always, like, follow, share, and we will see you soon.